Exposed, the incredible journey of a useless servant who transformed her life in just 14 days. Maria, a 34-year-old single mother, stood behind the counter of the bustling diner, a world of noise that was at once comforting and suffocating. The smells of sizzling bacon and freshly brewed coffee swirled around her like her dreams, always just out of reach. Customers chatted loudly, laughter erupted, and plates clattered, but all Maria felt was the weight of her exhaustion bearing down on her. With 2 young children relying on her and bills piling up, she wore the heavy label of a useless servant. But today, everything would change. Amid the morning rush, Mr. Jenkins, a spry elderly war veteran, walked in, his eyes shining with the wisdom of years gone by. As he settled into his usual booth, Maria noticed the sparkle in his gaze, a stark contrast to the weariness that marked her own face. "Good morning, Miss Maria," he said, his voice warm and welcoming, as though he could see the struggle etched on her skin. Their brief conversation ignited a flicker of hope within her. He shared stories of courage, victories won by ordinary people who dared to dream beyond their circumstances. For the first time in months, she felt a spark of something deeper than survival. It was a call to battle against her own despair. As she walked Mr. Jenkins to the door, he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're far more than what others see, Maria," he insisted, and for a moment, she felt the chains of her existence loosen. That single, powerful sentence rippled through her heart like a pebble tossed into a quiet pond, sending waves of possibility across the surface of her mundane life. But just as quickly, the fear of eviction and a grimy existence closed in on her like a heavy fog. Clutching her children's south future close, she vowed to change her life within 14 days. Each morning, she fought back the dark thoughts that had settled in, battling against the chains of self-pity and hesitance. She listened eagerly to audiobooks on public speaking while folding laundry, practiced speeches in the mirror late into the night, and devoured community organization manuals during stolen moments in between shifts. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Maria's journey had become more than self-improvement. It evolved into a mission for justice. She confronted the economic inequalities that pressed down on families like hers, feeling the sharp sting of judgment from those well-off neighbors who had always seen her as invisible. But with each passing day, as she gained confidence and met others sharing her burden, she began to form a grassroots group determined to uplift their community. As the pivotal day approached, the community forum, where she would finally share her truth, her heart raced with anxiety and excitement. Would she have the courage to expose the struggles that had remained silent for too long? Standing at the podium, she gazed into the expectant faces of local leaders. A hush fell over the crowd. A moment stretched before her, and with her heart pounding, she knew she held their attention. Would this be the moment she claimed her voice, or the moment she faded back into the shadows? As she gathered her spiraling thoughts, one burning question lingered. Would she dare to fight for her dreams? Maria stood at the podium, her heart drumming in her chest like a war drum. The lights above cast a glaring brightness, illuminating every line of her face, and she felt as exposed as the title of her journey proclaimed. What if they laughed? What if they ignored her? But deep down, she remembered Mr. Jenkins' words. "You're far more than what others see." With a deep breath, she pulled her gaze away from her trembling hands and fixed it on the faces in the crowd. The room was filled with a mix of curiosity and skepticism, fellow parents, local leaders, and those whom she had perceived as so much more powerful than she felt. Each of them had their own stories, their own battles. She couldn't let her voice falter now. This was her moment. "Hi, I'm Maria," she started, her voice wavering slightly but clear enough to carry across the silence. "I'm here for the mothers and fathers fighting every day to provide for their families, but who often feel invisible." A murmur rolled through the audience, a mix of surprise and connection. Her words hung in the air, heavier than she had imagined. She continued, leaning into her truth. Every day, I wake up before the sun does. I juggle 2 jobs while managing the responsibilities of raising my children alone. Like many of you, I feel the weight of judgments and misconceptions. With each word that flew from her lips, Maria felt a new strength surge through her. She was no longer the useless servant. She was a warrior for those who shared her struggles. A man in the back raised his hand. How do you expect to change anything? His voice cut through her resolve momentarily, but she didn't waver. Instead, she invited the challenge. Because change starts with conversation. It starts with us standing together, she replied, gesturing toward the others present. If we unite, we can push back the weight of inequality that's crushing our families. Her voice grew louder, fueled by the fire inside her. With every passing moment, the tension in the room shifted. Nods of agreement emerged, and a few faces softened. Perhaps her raw honesty was igniting something deeper within them, a recognition that they, too, had spent too long living in silence. As she shared stories of sleepless nights and the stress of balancing bills, she caught sight of familiar faces, other parents who had been through similar storms. There was Lisa from the playground, who always looked exhausted but never complained. And Jake, the mechanic who worked late and lost sleep just to make ends meet. In them, she saw the reflection of her struggle. The more she spoke, the less she felt like a lone warrior. By the time she reached the conclusion of her speech, a fire had spread through the audience, warm and alive. If we come together, if we can speak our truths, we can't just be heard. We can be seen. The applause erupted, unexpected and empowering. A wave of relief washed over her, but beneath that was a deeper current of realization. This was just the beginning. Her journey wouldn't end with one speech. It had only just started. As people began to gather around her, eager to share their stories and ideas, anticipation bubbled. They would form a coalition, a movement that could shake the foundations of their community and beyond. But as Maria basked in the moment, a chill ran down her spine. What battles would they face together? And more importantly, could her newfound strength sustain her if the road grew darker? As voices rose around her, the celebration of empowerment echoed against the walls, but doubts crept in. Would she have the resilience for whatever lay ahead? As those questions lingered in the air, Maria felt the spark of hope ignite once again, but it came with a caution. What if the very community she sought to uplift turned against her? Would she still find the strength within when it mattered most? Maria stood amidst the energy of the crowd, a bittersweet mix of triumph and anxiety swirling inside her. Each face reflected a flicker of hope, but uncertainty loomed over her heart like a storm cloud waiting to break. As people flooded toward her, she sensed the urgency in their voices. They wanted to talk, to connect, to share the burdens they had long carried alone. Maria, thank you. Your words felt like a lifeline, Lisa said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It was a small relief to see that her voice had made a difference, but the weight of responsibility pressed heavier on her shoulders. Can we get coffee and discuss ideas? I have thoughts about how we can connect more families, Jake chimed in, his enthusiasm palpable. His hands gestured wildly, almost as if he was trying to paint a picture of collaboration that didn't exist. As the energy buzzed around her, Maria's heart raced. She nodded, trying to look composed. Absolutely. Let us meet up. We can create a plan. But even as she spoke, doubt sliced through her confidence. Could they really create change? Later, as Maria sipped on the stale coffee, she felt the weight of her promise. Each voice that spoke brought a mix of inspiration and fear. Voices of parents who felt unseen, their stories intertwined with hers. Yet, for a moment, the warmth of community stood still. Would this fire flicker out as quickly as it came? They brainstormed ideas for a community gathering, a space to share, a sanctuary for more stories. As laughter filled the room, Maria couldn't shake the shadows creeping in. What if this companionship faded when faced with adversity? What if the brave faces turned hostile if things didn't go according to plan? Even as they brainstormed, Moments of silence penetrated, punctured by her thoughts. The conversation took a deeper turn when Lisa hesitated. I have to be honest, Maria. What if our community isn't ready? What if we become targets of their ridicule instead of supporters? Her words hung in the air like an unanswered prayer. Everyone chewed on the possibility. Maria felt her heart twist uncomfortably. They were fragile, their dreams newly born, but they also felt potent. Maybe that's our power, she offered, a bit hesitantly. Maybe we are stronger than their judgments. We can transform this fear into action. The semblance of hope wrapped them like an embrace. Slowly, they started building a framework. But Maria knew they'd just scratched the surface. I want this, she finally confessed. I want to help those families who may feel as lost as I once did. I need to know that we can sustain it. As the meeting wrapped up, Maria realized she didn't feel alone anymore. The fear hadn't vanished, but it was dwarfed by a burgeoning sense of purpose. They were stepping onto a path unknown, knowing full well it could be rough. As each person left, Maria felt a flicker of something new: community, responsibility, potential. Yet, with every step she made, the gnawing fear of failure loomed like a specter. Could this coalition endure challenges ahead? Could her voice, so recently kindling a fire, manage to keep it blazing when the winds turned harsh? The afternoon sun cast a golden hue over her city as Maria walked home. Despite the lingering doubts, a sense of direction drew a smile to her lips. She clenched her fists, feeling that conviction stirring again. It was more than just a dream, it was a promise to herself and to those who would gather. There was power in unity, a collective voice that could echo beyond their fears. But as she turned the corner, a thought struck her like lightning. What if they encountered someone powerful who sought to silence them? Would they rise together or fracture under pressure? Would she be able to shield those she fought for? The weight pressed on her once more, but the flicker of resilience continued to spark. Because this was only the beginning, what would be the next step toward their transformation? Maria's heart raced as she entered her tiny apartment, the door clicking shut behind her. She leaned against it for a moment, gathering her thoughts. The sounds of the city faded away, leaving only the echoes of her meeting with Lisa, Jake, and the others. Each face that had gathered around her felt like a constellation of shared dreams, twinkling with possibility. But with that brightness came an overwhelming darkness of doubt. Her small kitchen was cluttered, papers strewn about with hastily scribbled ideas, a half-empty coffee mug sitting next to a fading plant that hadn't received enough sunlight. She ran a hand through her hair and took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. It was time to transform this chaos into something meaningful. With her phone in hand, Maria began typing. She drafted an email summoning everyone back for a follow-up meeting. This time, they needed a focus. Brainstorming was essential, but it meant nothing without a structure, a purpose. She jotted down an agenda, roles, responsibilities, and perhaps even the first steps they could take to rally more families to their cause. As she hit send, a spark of anticipation filled her. But just as quickly, the familiar whispers of her insecurities crept in. What if they didn't show up? What if her ideas fell flat? Forcing herself to push those thoughts aside, she turned on some music and let the rhythm wash over her. That night, she barely slept, tossing and turning with her mind racing. Faces of the families they'd met flashed before her eyes: parents struggling, kids feeling lost. She needed to protect them, to be their voice. Hours later, exhaustion pulled her into a restless sleep. Morning sunlight peeked through her window, and she woke with a start, determination shooting through her like a jolt of caffeine. As she dressed, she whispered to her reflection in the mirror, "You can do this, Maria. You have to." She made her way to the local community center, where they would meet again. This time, she arrived early, taking a moment to breathe in the scent of polished wood and fresh paint, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside her. As the minutes ticked by, the familiar faces began to appear. Jake bounded in first, enthusiasm lighting up his features. Lisa followed, her eyes bright with curiosity and a hint of anxiety. They gathered in a circle, the energy palpable. Maria felt a mix of excitement and fear radiating off them all. I want us to be clear about our mission, she started, her voice steady despite the tremor inside her. We need to listen to the community, but we also need to empower them and ourselves. We can't just cry out for change, we need to show how it can be done. The room buzzed with murmured agreements. Jake jumped in with ideas for outreach programs, while Lisa proposed workshops to strengthen communication amongst families. As each suggestion sparked another, the atmosphere shifted, fear transmuted into passion, uncertainty dissolved into conviction. But Maria knew they would need to address the elephant in the room, the worry that lurked beneath the surface. What happens when we face resistance? She asked, and the energy shifted. Eyes widened, breaths held. We might face backlash. It could get ugly. Silence washed over them. Yet, in that silence, Maria noticed resolve, as if they were all silently agreeing that they wouldn't allow fear to dictate their journey. The meeting wrapped up with a renewed sense of purpose. As Maria stepped out, an unexpected wave of warmth enveloped her. They were in this together, ready to challenge whatever lay ahead. Yet, even in her joy, a gnawing whisper lingered. What if the fear they faced was closer than they thought? What if they attracted the very shadows they had hoped to displace? She shook her head, determined to push that thought away. But there was something unnerving about the certainty that this was only the beginning. What might they uncover about their community and themselves as they bravely forged ahead? As the sun dipped low, casting an orange glow across the horizon, Maria set her jaw. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but they would face them as a united front. Stronger together. What would that mean for their fight? The sun rose brilliantly the next morning, golden rays filtering through Maria's kitchen window, yet the brightness felt muted against the unease settling in her stomach. She sipped her coffee, its warmth offering little comfort, and glanced at the schedule for the day. Meetings, calls, and the ever-present anxiety loomed over her like a storm cloud. When Maria arrived at the community center, she was greeted by a small group of concerned parents already gathered. Their faces showed apprehension, which only deepened the knot inside her. As she approached them, Jake appeared, his buoyant spirit a stark contrast to the tension. "Hey, Maria. Ready to tackle the world today?" he said, his voice ringing with optimism. "Yeah, ready as I'll ever be," she replied, mustering a smile. But even she could hear the tremor in her voice, the uncertainty lurking beneath the surface. As the meeting commenced, the atmosphere shifted. With every word exchanged, the gravity of their mission dug deeper into their hearts. Parents voiced their fears about the impending changes in their neighborhood. Whispers of gentrification and displacement coated their conversations like thick smoke. Challenges loomed ominously, but within the struggle emerged a common thread of resilience. "Look," Lisa said, her voice firm, "we can't just stand by as things change. We have to make a plan right now." Her eyes shone with determination, igniting another layer of confidence in the group. "Maybe we can hold a forum," Jake suggested. "Bring everyone together to discuss these issues, share our experiences." Heads nodded, hope glowing brighter. "We could make flyers, stick them up everywhere. Let us get people talking." Maria felt her pulse quicken. Ideas flowed like a rushing river. They could turn this fear into action. "What if we invite local leaders to speak?" she proposed. "Get them involved, make them accountable." As they fleshed out details, Maria could hear the collective worry turn into brainstorming. Each suggestion chipped away at the insecurities that once held them back. But amidst the rising tide of enthusiasm lay an unspoken fear. What if their intentions were met with closed doors? Suddenly, a sharp voice sliced through the enthusiasm. It was an older woman in the back of the room. "What if no one listens? What is the point if it all falls on deaf ears?" Her words hit like a jolt, making the group go still. Maria felt as if a spotlight was on her. She had anticipated the skepticism, but hearing it aloud stung. "We can't control their response, but we can control our effort," she replied, her voice steady despite the fear creeping in. "Even if we're just planting seeds, something will grow. Change doesn't happen overnight." Yet, in her heart, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at the edge of something dangerous. Shadows hid behind the excitement, whispering doubts of failure and pushback, implications that could tear apart the fragile support they were building. After the meeting, as families shuffled out, Maria lingered. She felt the weight of the past few days. Had they truly considered the potential fallout? The backlash could be severe, but wasn't that the risk they had signed up for? The familiar gnawing doubt returned, her heartbeat echoing the conflict within. When she stepped outside, the air was thick with anticipation. The world seemed to hold its breath alongside her. Could they really make a difference? Clutching the paper filled with ideas, she turned to look at the horizon, the sky pink and orange against darkening blues, the weight of uncertainty reflecting the unpredictable challenges ahead. But she couldn't afford to back down now. She had promised these families hope, a fight for a better future. In truth, the fight was bigger than just the community. It was about each individual standing together. As Maria walked back into the center, her resolve hardened. What awaited them around the corner? Would they have what it takes to face the shadows lurking, or would their hopes melt away in the face of adversity? She couldn't shake the feeling that real confrontations were brewing just beneath the surface, waiting to break free. The next morning dawned with a shroud of gray clouds draping over the community center. Maria pulled her coat tighter around her as she stepped outside, breathing in the crisp air that felt more befitting of the anxiety that gnawed at her. The thought of the forum weighed heavily on her mind. Were they prepared for the challenges ahead? Arriving at the center, she noticed the familiar faces of the parents who had come together to fight for their homes. Yet today, there was a different energy, a mix of excitement and fear buzzing in the air. She took a deep breath, determined to transform that energy into action. "Hey, you ready for today?" Jake approached her, his bright smile framing a sincerity that somehow eased her nerves. "Let us hope so," Maria replied, forcing a smile of her own. "I'm just worried about how it'll go. What if the community doesn't show up? What if we do this and it falls flat?" Jake placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "They will. They need this." His belief kindled a flicker of hope in the pit of her stomach. As they set up the room, families started filtering in. Maria greeted each parent with warm hugs and smiles. She could see the apprehension writ large on their faces, but the resolve was stronger today. They filled out the chairs, their presence an unspoken promise to fight for what mattered. The atmosphere thickened as the hour approached. Maria spotted Lisa with a stack of flyers, rallying a few last-minute supporters as she encouraged everyone to speak up, to share their stories. The room pulsed with anxious energy, a mighty storm preparing to break. At last, the meeting began. Jake took the lead, introducing everyone and setting the stage for the passionate discussions that were sure to follow. When Maria stood to speak, she clutched a loose sheet of notes, her hands trembling slightly. "I appreciate you all being here. We're in this together, and we have to make our voices heard." Her heart raced as she spoke, the fear still palpable but now underlined by a shared hope. As parents began to share their stories, emotions surfaced. Voices cracked as they recounted how they felt their livelihoods were slipping away. Anger and frustration mixed with vulnerability, but within that chaos, solidarity began to form. Suddenly, the ominous sound of chairs scraping against the floor silenced the room. A local politician had walked in, with an entourage of news cameras buzzing behind him. Maria's heart thumped loudly against her ribs as the recognition in the room grew palpable. This was their chance, their moment of exposure. "Good to see the community so engaged," he declared, injecting a wave of hope. Maria gestured for silence. "Let us be honest," she said, staring the politician down. "Are you willing to listen? To represent us, not just today for the cameras, but moving forward?" Gasps followed her boldness. Tension rippled through the crowd. The politician hesitated, processing the challenge laid before him. Murmurs of support surged, emboldening Maria's voice. "If you truly care about our community, prove it. Show us you're here for us." As she spoke, a palpable wave of energy crashed over the crowd. Hope, fear, anger, but right in the center, determination. Maria felt something shift within herself. She had stepped forward, not just for her neighbors, but finally for her own fight too. As the forum went into chaos with supporters cheering, a woman stood in the back, her arms crossed firmly. Maria seized the moment to inquire, What about you? Where do you stand? The woman's eyes flashed with skepticism. What will it take for you to be taken seriously? Maria's heart raced again. She realized they were not just at the beginning of a discussion, but standing at the edge of something bigger. What would it take for them to be heard? She looked at her friends, family, and this determined crowd. Together, we can figure that out, Maria declared, her voice echoing in the growing tension. The meeting hung in the balance, a turning point poised for either triumph or disillusionment. As the tension thickened, Maria couldn't help but wonder, would they be able to voice their cries loud enough to resonate beyond the walls of this gathering? Would their resolve be enough to bring about change, or would the shadows lurking in the background prove too daunting? The crowd buzzed with uncertainty, a storm of emotions swirling in the room. Maria could feel the weight of their collective hope pressing against her, urging her to either soar or falter. The woman stood there, still skeptical, arms crossed as if to shield herself from the fervor swirling around them. "Look, we're here," Maria ventured, taking a step closer, her voice steady but soft. "We have stories that matter. We're not asking for a handout. We're asking for respect." She could see the heads around her nodding in agreement, a wave of support cresting above the skepticism. "Respect is earned," the woman said, her voice slicing through the tension. "What are you prepared to do to get it?" Maria's mind raced. She thought about the sacrifices, the late nights spent organizing, the whispered fears shared in the dark corners of their homes. How could she encapsulate all that into a few words? "We're prepared to fight," she asserted, making eye contact with the politician, then with the crowd. "To stand together. To show them we won." To be silenced. The parents exchanged glances, a spark igniting among them. The tension in the room shifted slightly toward decisiveness. Maria could see it in their eyes. Determination was taking root. "Tonight, we're more than neighbors. We're a coalition," Jake chimed in, his voice rising above the murmurs. "Let us make a plan. Let us get our stories out there, to the media, to the people in power. We deserve to be seen." Louder cheers erupted. The room pulsed with renewed conviction as the stories flowed like a river. Each voice melded into the next, the tales of struggle and desperation gaining momentum behind Maria's unyielding spirit. Faces brightened, and fears started to lift. They were no longer just a crowd but a chorus, unified by the shared desire to reclaim their lives. As the discussion deepened, Maria caught the woman's gaze again, this time seeing something different. Was it understanding? Perhaps even a shift in perspective? But just as quickly as that thought bloomed, it was snuffed out by another voice that cut through the gathering like a knife. "We can talk all night, but if no one takes this seriously, we'll be back to where we started." A man shouted out, frustration spilling over. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, the energy wrenching from hopeful to tense once more. "Then we take it seriously." Maria shot back, her heart pounding in her chest. "We make a plan with actionable steps. Organize a petition, spread the word, get interviews in the media. We can't just be voices in this room. We need to be a movement." More nods, more murmurs of agreement. The man who had spoken earlier now seemed to contemplate this shift. Maybe there was some truth in her fiery insistence. The politician cleared his throat, stepping forward. "If you can gather your community and show me that you are serious, I promise to take your concerns to City Hall." "Not just promises," Maria interrupted, "actions. We want to see commitment to solutions. No more empty words." The room erupted again in cheers and applause. An unexpected sense of unity was forming, but Maria could still sense the skepticism lurking beneath the surface. What if this was all another false dawn? As the meeting drew to a close, they were buzzing with plans and determination. Yet, lingering at the back of her mind was that woman's challenge. What would it take to command respect from the powers that be? Later, as Maria stood amidst the chatter, she caught sight of the woman again. Their eyes locked. "You've got the fire," the woman admitted, a hint of a smile breaking through. "But you're going to need more than that." Maria felt the weight of her words like a spark set to ignite. "Then let us find out what we need together." And just like that, with the crowd slowly dispersing, she realized they were no longer just fighting against something. They were fighting for something: hope, respect, their very homes. As Maria stepped outside, The clouds hung low, but the night glowed softly with possibilities. A growing sense of urgency clutched her heart. What would their next steps involve? Would they be able to build a strategy that could challenge the status quo and truly make their voices resonate? The journey was just beginning, and she felt the pulse of a movement starting to form. But deep down, Maria knew that every step forward would demand even more from them than they had ever imagined. As Maria stepped out into the chilly night air, she breathed deeply. The weight of their discussions hung in the air around her, mixed with the scent of damp earth from a recent rain. A streetlight flickered, casting long shadows on the pavement, which felt like a representation of their journey ahead, filled with uncertainty, but illuminated by a shared light. The warmth from the meeting clung to her even as the cold night wrapped around her body. She walked slowly, savoring the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. A few parents lingered nearby, discussing plans, excitement crackling in their voices. Jake approached, eyes bright with determination. "Did you see that woman's face?" he said, an infectious grin spreading across his features. "I think we're onto something." Maria couldn't help but smile back. "Yeah, it felt like we finally stirred something. But we have to keep this momentum. We can't fall back into whispers and worries." "Agreed," Jake replied, falling into step beside her. "Let's set up a time tomorrow to meet. Maybe rework those stories into a press release?" She nodded eagerly. "We need to show them the faces behind these tales. These are lives we're talking about." But just as they rounded the corner, a shadow emerged from the darkness, a lone figure standing against the wall, arms crossed. It was the woman from the meeting. Maria's heart sank a little. Here was the reality again, the skepticism she had felt in the woman's gaze earlier. "I need to be upfront," the woman's voice sliced through the night, cool and calm. "I'm not here as support. I'm here as a challenge. Just so we're clear." A lump formed in Maria's throat. "What do you mean?" "You have the fire, but fire burns. You have to learn to control it. This isn't just about passion, it's about strategy," the woman said, her eyes narrowing. "You need to be prepared for what you'll face out there. The media can twist your words. The politicians can ignore you, and your community might turn against you, out of fear or misunderstanding." Jake stepped in, ready for a fight. "We're not scared of that. We've faced worse." But Maria held up a hand, silencing him. The woman had a point. Everything they were trying to build could easily crumble if they weren't careful. "Okay," Maria started, forcing her voice to stay steady. "What do you suggest we do?" The woman relaxed slightly, a hint of respect softening her otherwise stern expression. "First, gather your stories. Make them personal. Then practice how you present them. Think of questions the media might throw at you. Prepare your defense against backlash. People will judge you harshly. Know your facts. Know your evidence. This fight won't be easy." Maria exchanged glances with Jake and the others who were now gathering near them, curiosity and concern evident in their eyes. The weight of the woman's words hung between them, raw and pressing. If they failed, what would that mean for their community? "Will you help us?" Maria found herself asking, a flicker of hope igniting. "We need mentors, people who know this fight. Will you join us?" The woman paused, and Maria held her breath, waiting for a reply. Would she lean in? Or would she back away, staying a spectator? "I'll think about it," she said at last. "But if I join you, you need to understand failure is an option. The real work starts now." Maria felt the urgency of those words sink in like a stone, but within that weight was a challenge she couldn't ignore. They were on the cusp of something bigger than themselves. As the woman turned to leave, Maria called out, "Wait. What if we're successful? What if we can truly make a difference?" The woman glanced back, a small smirk playing at her lips. "Then we'll learn that success is just the beginning and you'll need to be prepared for what comes next." The shadows of doubt began to swirl in Maria's mind again. This wasn't just a fight for respect anymore, it was becoming something larger. Would they be strong enough? Could they truly unite and push through adversity? With a deep breath, she clenched her fists, determination rising like a tide within her. It was time to transform hope into action, and she would not let fear dictate their path. They stood on the edge of this new adventure, hearts racing. But what awaited them on that journey? Maria felt a thrill of anticipation. The real battle was only just beginning, and she was ready to face it head-on. The next morning dawned with a veil of gray clouds hanging low in the sky, matching the weight that pressed down on Maria's chest. She woke up with a sense of urgency, an electric thrill mixed with apprehension. The fire from the previous night hadn't faded. It flickered still, urging her to dive into the unknown. She pulled on her favorite jacket, its worn fabric offering a comforting hug, before heading out to meet with Jake and the others. They had decided to gather at the local coffee shop, where the smell of roasted beans mingled with the chatter of familiar faces. As she walked, each step echoed her resolve. She could picture the stories they needed to gather, stories of struggle, triumph, and everything in between, waiting to empower their mission. At the coffee shop, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Jake was already there, scrolling through notes, his eyes bright with the promise of the day. As the others filtered in, Maria noticed the tension in their smiles. This was more than just a project. It felt like the first step in a journey that could change everything. Okay, team. Let us brainstorm how we can present this, how to tell our story, Jake said, his enthusiasm infectious. He leaned forward, his fingers drumming on the table. We need to be relatable. We need to pull people in, show them why this matters. Maria's heart raced as ideas tumbled out in a stream. They discussed statistics, personal anecdotes, and even humor, anything that could resonate and spark change. But as the conversation grew, so did the reality of what lay ahead. They would have to push against the tides of doubt, and she felt every weight of that pressure on her shoulders. As they set up a plan for gathering stories from their community, Maria couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She turned slightly and spotted the woman from the night before, sitting at the far corner of the shop, her eyes sharp and focused. An uneasy feeling crept through Maria. Did the woman really intend to help, or was she simply waiting to see them stumble? Maria? Jake's voice brought her back. You seem distracted. Sorry, she said, shaking her head, trying to clear out the lingering doubts. Just thinking about the importance of what we're doing. Let us make it count then. Jake replied, his determination lifting her spirits. After finishing their brainstorming session, they decided to split into pairs to start gathering stories. Maria teamed up with Anna, a recent college grad who had a way of connecting with everyone she met. Anna radiated warmth as she grabbed Maria's arm. Let us do this. We'll hit the streets and find the heart of these stories. They ventured into the nearby neighborhoods, talking to families, community leaders, even kids playing in the park. Each exchange added to their collection of voices, raw, honest, and powerful. The stories poured out like water, each one a thread weaving their mission tightly together. Maria felt the burden starting to lift, replaced with a sense of hope. They were stitching something meaningful. Just as they finished one last interview, Maria's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Jake. You guys okay? Come back ASAP. Urgent. Her heart dropped, and a sense of foreboding settled in. We need to hurry back, she told Anna, urgency fueling their steps. What happened? Anna asked, concern in her voice. Not sure, but I think something's changed. As they raced back to the coffee shop, the image of the woman popped into Maria's mind again. The weight of her warning echoed ominously. Success awaited, yes, but so did something else. What if it wasn't just opponents they were fighting against, but something deeper? Stepping through the door, they found Jake pacing, a frown etched on his face. Maria, the media caught wind of our efforts. They want an interview right now. Stunned, Maria glanced at Anna, a mix of fear and adrenaline coursing through her. She knew they were ready in spirit, but were they really prepared? Can we do this? Maria whispered, eyes narrowing in thought, but as Jake threw a determined smile and gestured them to sit, the enormity of the moment settled like a thick mist. This was their chance. With a deep breath, they plunged into the fray. What would they say when the cameras rolled? Would their voices crumble or rise? The stakes had never felt higher, and the journey only seemed to deepen. Could they transform the narrative, or would it all spin out of control? Maria felt the weight of anticipation building like a storm on the horizon. Maria stared at the bright studio lights glittering above her and felt the warmth of the camera lens staring right back. She took a deep breath, her pulse quickening. Jake nodded at her, his expression a blend of excitement and trepidation. They had come so far. Now was the moment to let their voices echo against the walls of their community. Welcome to our special segment today. We're here with a group of inspiring individuals fighting for a better future for their families. The host smiled, her voice warm as she gestured toward Maria and the others. What brings you here? This was it. The weight of her responsibilities piled up, but she could see the faces of her friends in her mind, faces that had shared pain and hope. We're here to raise awareness about the challenges faced by working families in our community, Maria began, her voice steadying as she drew upon the strength of her journey. Every day, we juggle jobs and family while facing rising costs and societal neglect. Our voices matter, and it's time to be seen. The host nodded, clearly intrigued. Tell us about those challenges. As Maria spoke, it was like a dam breaking. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, but they were not tears of sorrow, they were tears of realization. This was her moment, not just for herself, but for every single mother and father fighting the same fight. She detailed stories they had gathered: families facing eviction, children too hungry to focus on school, dreams suffocated by silence. With each passing word, their collective struggle transformed into raw power. Change isn't just possible, Maria declared, her voice gaining volume. It's necessary. We must unite, support each other, and fight against the forces that try to keep us silent. When she finished, the applause echoed around the studio, but also in her heart. Seeing Jake beam with pride made her believe even more. The conversation shifted to a panel of community leaders who faced questions about their roles in the issues Maria raised. She could feel the tension ripple through the audience, but the palpable spirit of purpose surged alongside it. This could spark a change. They weren't just speaking for themselves, but lit the way for others in similar positions to rise. As the program wound down, Maria's phone buzzed with notifications, messages flying in from supportive friends and family who had tuned in. Each word fueled her spirit, reminding her of the fire they had kindled together. When the interview ended and they stepped out of the studio, Maria felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. As they walked through the bustling streets, they stopped and embraced one another, laughter bubbling to the surface. They had faced adversity head-on, sharing their truth without fear, but as Maria stepped outside, that woman's caution replayed in her mind. Would this momentum hold? As they entered their community center to regroup, a new atmosphere greeted them. The walls filled with families. They were gathered, eager to share what they had seen and heard. "Maria!" shouted Lisa, waving her arms animatedly. "People are talking. The community is buzzing. They want to form groups, lend their voices." A wave of relief washed over Maria. They were coming together, and it felt monumental. Each baby step she had taken was leading them closer to a brighter horizon. "People need a champion," Jake added, his expression lit with possibility. "And today, you showed them it could be you." Maria stood to speak, her heart full. "This is just the start. We'll form action groups, organize discussions, keep pressure on our leaders to take our issues seriously," she announced. "We'll build a coalition. Our action will be our voice." As responsibilities shifted among them, hands raised with suggestions, and energy surged throughout the room. Each idea exchanged felt like a thread being woven into their shared mission, building a fabric of resilience and hope, poised to shape their futures. But still, Maria held the flicker of caution in her heart. What would happen when their voices grew? Would they remain united? Weeks passed, and busy days turned into late nights filled with phone calls and gatherings. They strategized, rallied support from local businesses, and shared their stories on social media. They created flyers, organized events, and soon a community forum was set in motion, aimed not just at the challenges they faced, but at the victories they could achieve together. The night of the forum arrived, and the energy was electric. Families crammed into the center, their faces filled with determination and pride. Maria took a moment, soaking it all in the strength that filled the room, the collective heartbeat of a movement born from courage. As she stood before the audience, her voice rang clear. This is our time. For every story shared and every dream stifled today, we break the silence. We rise together, and we refuse to be silenced any longer. Cheers erupted, echoing their fight, a battle for respect, understanding, and above all, community. They would face challenges, yes, but they stood as one, seeking justice with hearts blazing. Maria's journey from feeling like a useless servant to a warrior for her community had crystallized. She knew they had their work cut out, but here and now under this bright light they had all the tools they needed. It was only the beginning. Their future awaited, filled with promise and the knowledge that together they were unstoppable. The moment was ripe for transformation. Maria closed her eyes and took it all in, but the story doesn't end here. You need to subscribe now to catch the next chapter of this incredible journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and boost these voices even higher. Comment your feelings about this stirring transformation and what it means to you. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need a spark of hope today. Don't wait not even one more second to be part of this movement. Real change is made stronger when we stand together.